Pretty much. Like, I think Wally Miller, he claims to have identified all of them. But from what I gathered in news reports and that when it first happened, I think the number of people he probably identified is more like 14 or 15. And the rest of them were sent off to the Armed Forces Medical Examiners lab out in Maryland. I think it's in Rockford, if I remember correctly. And the rest of them, because they had much better, facilities for this, allegedly, that's where these remains ended up, and that's where the rest of them got identified.
But how would he identify it, though, Dom? Because he doesn't have any sophisticated lab there in Shanksville.
The FBI was bringing him in the samples to test it against. The FBI was allegedly collecting the samples from the family members, and, they brought up the equipment for him, and they sent him up a temporary lab there, and they brought him in all kinds of help, and they brought him the DNA samples to test against, and they brought him the list of names of who he was going to find, and so at times, like, a lot of people thought Wally Miller was complicit, but I think if he is involved in any kind of cover-up, I think he was pretty much duped into it himself.
Meaning he didn't know any better himself.
Yeah, too trusting.
Okay, have you talked to any of the victims of the families?
No.
No.
No, that I wouldn't know where to begin. Like, I wanted to contact Edward Felt's family because there's a report about he called Westmoreland County from the bathroom, and he told the guy who took the call, the operator, his name was John Shaw. He told him that there had been an explosion and that there was white smoke in the plane, and then shortly after that, the call they ended up losing contact.
Well, the reason I asked that is there's certainly a lot of question, and I know you know this about 9/11, where there really families who had, in other words, if there really was a plane or planes that hit the towers, and the victims then have family members, but the families don't seem to be wanting to talk about anything. So when you went to Shanksville, I think that testimony might have been really good if you could talk to the victims' families and say, what did the FBI tell you? When did you get word of this? Did you really lose somebody in a loved one there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think it's feasible that there weren't any real bodies there?
I mean, it's definitely feasible. I mean, when you look at the crater and it's 8 feet deep, it's maybe 15, 20 feet wide, and like, I saw the photos of the human remains that were collected at the site, and like I said, this is what was collected that I saw actual photos of. There was a left arm. It was probably from the forearm up to the fingertips. There was, it looked like a scalp, like a human scalp. It was hair, and it was, you could just tell what it was. And then there was pretty much, looked like a couple charred finger bones, and an organ that was either probably a lung or a heart. And that was it. For 44 people, human remains photographed outside the crash site by the coroner where he says, they were recovered outside the crater and inside the crater. Outside, that was all that I saw that was photographed. Now, he told me he had different pictures that were in files, and they were attributed to each passenger, but for some reason, all those files were naturally kept at a different location. How convenient that turned out to be.
Have you been approached by anybody from the government or FBI?
No.
So you don't pose any threat to them, that they're not concerned that you're over here saying what a lot of us are thinking is what really went on at that site, since apparently there wasn't.
I think I might be too cool and too well for a lot of people who are interested. Definitely in like the Shanksville aspect of 9/11 research. Definitely know my name, so I think kind of in that way I'm kind of like safer now.
Why would you say you're safer? I don't want to,
Just I feel a little more secure because I'm a public person whose name's out there and known, and if I disappear tomorrow, people are going to notice. Where if I wasn't such a public figure and I disappeared, I would be more worried if people didn't notice if I vanished. I mean, that's a chance everyone's got to take when you're doing this kind of stuff. It's like there could come a time where something very bad can happen to you. That's a very possible reality, but you got to do what you got to do if you believe. I mean,
yeah.
If I didn't have the questions and then go out and try to get the answers and I just sat here, it would. I feel like I'd be failing my children. Like I would be letting them. And I feel part of the reason why this government and this country is in such poor shape is because my parents really didn't care, and that's how they let me down. They were more part of the who cares, forget it, drop out. You know what I mean? That whole scene.
Well, your parents didn't care about you, so you feel that you have an obligation for your children.
That they didn't care about their rights and what the government and politicians were doing around them. You know, the whole establishment was just like, not that it wasn't about me, that it was, you know, they weren't concerned in world affairs and current domestic affairs, and that allowed such a level of corruption to continue to grow. And I believe there's a lot of corruption in our government, and that there's ways to expose it. And if they're covering things up, I think, you know, that's which is in the dark should be brought out into the light.
Well, I would agree with you, and I think Brian would agree with you, too. The problem is that I think in the past, you know, our parents probably were not even aware of that the government was doing these things, if they are doing these things. So that's probably why, you know, they didn't do anything about it. And they were very trusting.
True.
You know, they were very trusting. They thought the government was there, and they were the good guys, and you know, we wonder differently. But when you go to that site now, Dom, what do you see? Can you get to that crater?
Oh no, it's fenced off. They have armed guards there too. Because I've gone back in the area you're not supposed to go back into, because that's just how I am. And I tried to get closer because they keep you so far away, and it's like I'm not trying to get up, you know, to the actual site. But it's like, man, I'm like 500 yards away. Can I get a little bit closer to see this, you know, to pay respect, whatever, and just to see how small it is? And I was about 100 yards away. I was there with one of the guards that was working the site. I told him what I was doing. I was like, look, I just came back here. I said, you can stand here. I'm not making a run for it. I said, I'm not going out to desecrate anything or nothing like that. So I'm just going to take a few pictures and a little bit of video, and then I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive away. And he was real cool about it. So that was cool. And as I was standing there, I mean, the whole place is just fenced off back there. It really, the closer you get, it really puts into perspective how small that area is. I mean, right now, it's kind of like it's a little chunk of grass, and
all right,
it's
John,
a lighter green.
we want you to hold
the
that thought for a minute. We have to go to station identification, so just hold on. Listeners, we're coming right back, aren't we, Brian?
Yes, ma'am.